Hello, welcome to Nintendo Deep Dive. This is part 2 of my GameCube games show and tell. Last time on part 1, I had started showing off some of my games in chronological order according to their release, going from November of 2001 up to November of 2003. And we're just going to continue on from there. So, still in November, we have this beauty. What a nice case. And this is Extreme G Racing Association, a sequel to Extreme G3. I believe it's supposed to be a better game. And like Extreme G3 and Extreme G1 on the N64, you are racing futuristic bikes which are outfitted with weapons. This one's a little more grungy as far as aesthetic goes, though I do believe it's the better game of the two games on the GameCube. Manual's a little beat up. Anyway, so yeah, this game may have been one of Acclaim's last titles that they did. So, there's that. Okay, and after that, December 1st of 2003, we got the only sequel that I know of to the popular 1080 snowboarding game on the N64 with 1080 Avalanche. Features new music from Cauterize and Finger 11. I haven't heard a lot about this game. I've heard it's very good. I've heard that it's kind of squirrely to control, but it's got pretty good level design. It's more of a racing game than a trick game. And yeah, it's the second and last 1080 game. And of course, it's only for the GameCube. I haven't played it yet. I look forward to it, though I am concerned that I'll be terrible at it because I'm terrible at 1080 on the N64. Couldn't even get a foothold on it. So, yeah. And still in December, we got Pac-Man Versus. And of course, this is a double pack with Pac-Man World 2, which came out sometime in 2002. Pac-Man Versus is a game that belongs to Namco, but it was actually developed by Shigeru Miyamoto. And it doesn't say only for the GameCube, but I believe it should. I suppose it's incorrect because Pac-Man World 2 was a multi-platform. This game sees you using the GBA adapter, or the GBA link, whatever it's called, to create an asymmetrical multiplayer experience where Pac-Man on the GBA outruns the ghosts, whatever their name is, as he plays the typical Pac-Man game on the GBA. But on the top screen, you have all the ghosts in split screen played by the other remaining 3 players, or up to 3 other players anyway. And they coordinate to catch Pac-Man. A simple game, and there would be a similar game like it on the Wii U. But yeah, I played it with nephews of mine. Simple, but I don't know if you could ever wear out the novelty of it. You may not be able to play it hours on end, but it was quite good. And after Pac-Man versus, still in December, we got Beyond Good and Evil, which I don't own for the GameCube. I own it for the Xbox, on the Xbox One. I believe it's a sci-fi adventure very similar to Zelda in gameplay, and it's quite well regarded, even beloved. I haven't played it. I look forward to playing it. And I do appreciate that there were games that were taking direct inspiration from Zelda after Ocarina of Time during this period in a way that games don't really do anymore. We're not so much in the 7th, 8th, and 9th generation. So after Beyond Good and Evil, in February of 2004, we got Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. And this is another game that utilizes the GBA Game Link. In 2004, I guess late 2003, and 2004, they really went whole hog on this idea of making dual screen games, similar to the Wii U, but you could do it with the GBA, a link cable, and a GameCube. Yeah. This game is a cooperative RPG, and it's a Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy spin-off, mind you, but it's quite well liked. It has very fun ideas, and the trick with the 2 screens is that different players have different objectives that are, well, which are only privy to that particular player, or that particular player is only privy to that particular objective, rather. Which sounds possibly mundane, but it means that the players are doing different things, and I suppose you can probably manage inventory better. I'm not sure how it utilizes the dual screen stuff, but for a console that was pretty well iterative and straight-laced in many ways, the GameCube also had fun experimental ideas like this. I haven't played it. I need to find people to play it with, though. And I even bought all the GBA stuff. 3 GBAs to be exact, to play this multiplayer. Hopefully one day. And after Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, we got 007 Everything or Nothing, which it's probably I don't know if it's the second or third best. Could be the first best James Bond game on this system. 007 Everything or Nothing is an interesting game because it's not really a shooter, as you basically just do auto aim. though there is some aiming within that particular tight window that you can do after you do the auto aiming. But it's not so much a shooter as it is just a character action game. Because in addition to shooting, you have melee combat with objects that you can throw or use, like bottles or crowbars. You can just use your fists, and you have counters and even cool things like the buttons, the different buttons, X and Y, control the different fists, so there's kind of a rhythm to it, though it's sort of a superfluous feature. There's just lots of different features aside from shooting in the game, and one of the big ones being vehicles, lots of vehicles. The best one being the motorcycle, but even driving around in the cars is also a lot of fun. And there's other big set piece moments aside from just using the motorcycle and or car. It feels like a James Bond movie. In the story and in the production, you have Pierce Brosnan voicing James Bond and Willem Dafoe as the antagonist. It's a great time. It's like a James Bond movie. And the gameplay varies in quality, but overall it's just a quintessentially good game. But I do not have the case for it, as you can see. So, after after 007, which that came out in February with Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. In April, we got WarioWare Inc. Mega Party Games. Now this game, I admit the copy's a little beat up, but this game is a port of WarioWare micro games on the GBA to the GameCube, with a dozen or so multiplayer modes, which are all very absurd and unique. And with those multiplayer modes, you actually get what's almost a new experience, even though it's something that you would have seen on the GBA. So it's not entirely a new game, but the multiplayer modes, I can't really explain them, but they're unlike something you'd see in other games. And like the idea of competing in WarioWare, even just a basic competition with micro games, makes this a worthwhile purchase. Yeah, I haven't played it, but I'm very much looking forward to doing so. After WarioWare Inc. Mega Party Games, which that came out, as I said, in April. In May of 2004, we got Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, unlike Chamber of Secrets, I believe the aesthetic of this game is more close to the movie. But it's still a very similar game to that, to its predecessor, and it's also GBA compatible, which is cool. I've heard this game has a lot of good Zelda-style puzzles, and it's still very similar to what you'd see in Chamber of Secrets, though it's not as well beloved. I don't really know much about it, but it was considered one of the better Harry Potter games. And, still developed by EA, which EA's just been doing really good things this generation. on and off the GameCube. After Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, we got in June, early June, we got The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures, obviously only for Nintendo GameCube. And this game was probably the biggest showcase for GBA, the GBA Game Link, or GBA Power Cable. I don't know what it was called. Let's see what it's called. To play this multiplayer game, 2 to 4 players, you will need one Game Boy Advance system and one Nintendo GameCube Advance and one Nintendo That's a mouthful. And one Nintendo GameCube Game Boy Advance cable per player. So let's just call it a GBA Link cable. So this game, it's somewhat similar to Link to the Past, except you have 4 players. And the big thing was, by having the players have their separate screens, they could get separated from each other on the main screen and still have a viewing window for themselves, even though they were off the main screen. And more than that, it actually encouraged players to separate. So certain players could go indoors into buildings, and then on their viewing window on the GBA, they would be inside the house in the interior, while the other players would be muddling about outside. You could play it by yourself, but that's not the intended experience, though I believe it is pretty good in that sense. This is the only Zelda game I have not played. I'm trying to figure out if that's true. Yeah, this is the only Zelda game I haven't played. But I own it, and I have all the equipment for it. Really looking forward to it. And this is a beautiful box art. As you can see, you have sort of Toon Link here, but then you have enemies that resemble enemies from Link to the Past, and that is really emblematic of the art style you find in this game. You really can't see it with these small viewing windows, though. I have never opened this up, I don't think, to see this manual. That is a fantastic manual art. Like, wonderful stuff. Oh, look at this. So yeah, 2004 was a big deal for dual screen gaming with the GBA Link. And that's awesome. And that's 2 original Zelda games for the Nintendo GameCube. After 4 Swords Adventures, we got a game called Asterix and Obelix XXL, which did not come out in North America on the GameCube, but it came out in Europe on the GameCube. So I included it, and I have the digital version of it elsewhere. It's supposed to be pretty good. It's a beat-em-up platformer. But after that, which came out in June, still in June, we got a licensed movie game that would be beloved for years to come in the form of Spider-Man 2. This game is really well liked to this day, particularly because of its web-slinging mechanics that actually saw you, how would I put it, that actually saw you having to connect to real world objects when you swung rather than just into the ether like the first game. I don't know what that logo says, but I believe that's the Treyarch logo. I could be wrong. Which Treyarch, who would go on to develop Call of Duty games, some of the principal best Call of Duty games, was developing these licensed games for Activision. And they did a marvelous job, apparently. So this is considered a classic licensed movie title, just like Return of the King. And just like, maybe to a lesser degree, SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. So, after Spider-Man 2, in July of 2004, we got Tales of Symphonia by Namco, only for Nintendo GameCube, at least in the West. This is one of the few big, prominent RPGs for the Nintendo GameCube. And it actually has a healthy stable of them, this not being the only one, such as Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which is a different kind of RPG, but still an RPG, similar to this one. This game could be hard to buy with both discs, but I, of course, have both discs here. And this game, the combat is essentially almost like a beat 'em up. And I believe it could be, well, it says 2 to 4 players simultaneously, so it's a beat 'em up RPG essentially. I don't know if that's unique to this Tales of game, but that's what's in here. And you can command your AI opponents or your AI party members to do things for you if you're playing by yourself while you move around an isometric battlefield. It had big, flashy cutscenes, very anime inspired. And yeah, this was one of the few RPGs we got on the GameCube just for it, at least in the West. And with all that memory the game required, you got 2 discs. The Switch release of this was apparently underwhelming, but it's not something to hold against the game itself. And then that game, which came out in July, after that, in August of 2004, we got Pikmin 2, which I don't own a physical copy of. Very expensive. Not necessarily the biggest fan of Pikmin 2 anyway, but it is a very interesting game and a very interesting sequel. I will certainly give it that, and far from a bad game. So, Pikmin 2. After Pikmin 2, in September, we got a game by Codemasters, who I believe do the what was the games they did? Time Splitters. They were the creators of Time Splitters, and they created this game called Second Sight. And the game was a third-person shooter where you had telekinetic powers. And I don't actually know what that entails, but there's lots of different powers you can use in addition to guns. The art style of the game is very stylized, just like with Time Splitters, and that has allowed the game to age very, very well. I don't know about the shooting mechanics, but the art style is good, and this game is considered very interesting and a very, very solid multi-plat release for the GameCube. And yeah, that was September. September of 2004. After Second Sight in early October, we got a game that's very, very beloved, Paper Mario, The Thousand-Year Door. This would probably be the favorite of Nintendo GameCube RPGs. I have not played it, but I did pick this up when I found it for very cheap, considering that this is almost a $200 game, at least as far as Canadian money goes. And the game is very beautiful. It's basically the perfection of this sort of art style. And I don't think they've ever really made it look better outside of marginal improvements. Even the remaster on the Switch, I don't think it makes me... it doesn't make me feel like this version is now outdated, because the graphics still look really good. In fact, they might look better in that they're flatter with less draw distance, and they makes it look more like a cartoon. So I have no problem with owning this version, and I will be playing this version when I get around to it. So yeah, 2004 has actually seen a fair number of RPGs on the Switch, with Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Tales of Symphonia, and Paper Mario. And after Paper Mario, The Thousand-Year Door, in October, we got the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which I may have seen this movie, or I may have not. I don't know if this is as beloved as Battle for Bikini Bottom, but it seems like it's very similar gameplay, and people seem to like it. And it has these racing sections with the hamburger vehicle, which is a lot of fun, and the graphics seem quite similar. So, I don't know. I have not played it, but if it's as good as Battle for Bikini Bottom, and if it's as good as this manual is, which I'm very impressed that it's all colored, then I will be very, very happy. I wonder if there was a Jimmy Neutron game on the Nintendo GameCube. Oh, there we go. Game Boy Advance and Nintendo GameCube. That could be fun. Could be quite terrible too. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of good licensed games, as I said at the start of part 1 of this show and tell. So, after SpongeBob SquarePants the movie in early November of 2004, we got the Lord of the Rings, the Third Age. The most exciting RPG since Final Fantasy. Who said that? Electronic Gaming Monthly. This is a game that is based off of the movie. The license is the Lord of the Rings movie, but you do not play any of the characters. You just play a elf, a human, and a dwarf that are unrelated original characters, but you follow the events of the movie fairly closely. And I've heard that this game's combat system, while not necessarily super creative, is very visually dazzling. And I've heard varying things about this game, but from what I gather, it seems like a good RPG. Not a great one, but a good one. And a good RPG with Lord of the Rings as its subject matter, well, that's worth owning. And here we have EA games again. And the presentation's pretty good overall, really capturing the magic of the movies. So good job, EA. If only you remained as good as you were then. So, another RPG and another game by EA. So after Lord of the Rings, Third Age, we got a sequel to Mario Tennis 64 in the form of Mario Power Tennis. And this, I think this is pretty much undisputably the best that Mario Tennis has ever been, particularly because the courses are the best that they've ever been, and the mechanics, while I assume they're similar, remain solid, and you have great courses to use those mechanics on and lots of different modes. And the game looks really good, as you can see. Or, I'm not sure you can see. Yeah. Good looking graphics. Not too much. The flat lighting of these games really helps these cartoon characters look really good. Oh, look at this. Keeping with tradition, it is a tennis ball. The disc art. That's very nice. I haven't played this game, though after playing lots of Mario Tennis 64, I feel like I would be familiar with it when I got my hands on it. And I don't think there's much dispute. It's the best Mario Tennis. And the second sports game on the GameCube, but not the last. And I believe it was developed by Camelot Studios or Camelot Inc. Camelot Limited, maybe. Camelot something, as was the first Mario Tennis 64. Or the first Mario Tennis on the 64, pardon me. So after Mario Power Tennis, which came out in November, we got Metroid Prime 2, which, I don't know. Metroid Prime 2, what's there to say about it? It's probably my least favorite Prime game, but it's still very creative and ingenious in many of its sections. I do not have the physical version of it, unfortunately, but still super creative. A good game, if not a great one, due to lots and lots of frustrations and vexations that are needless and cruel. But anyway, I don't have it here, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. And after Metroid Prime 2 came out, we got, in November, just a day after, we got Baten Kaito's Eternal Wings of Revenants, which I have a copy of that game, but I'm not finding it. Here we go. I just have to sort out some of these. Silly me just hitting things. This game, if anything, it's a very beautiful game. also an exclusive for the GameCube and an RPG by Namco. This really was the year of RPGs for the Nintendo GameCube. I think this year had as many RPGs, perhaps, as the PS2 had in 2004, possibly. Though every other year, of course, that was not the case. This game, I don't know if you can see the art style. It's all hand-drawn, isometric, almost side view dioramas that you traverse through, and it is quite beautiful. The combat is that of a card battling game, I believe. We're seeing a lot of double disc games for these RPGs. So while these had limited capacity, you could always just do this, which may have been an inconvenience to both the developer and the player, but still a small inconvenience at that. Oh, that's nice. That is a nice little bit of stuff there. Huh, lovely, lovely. I haven't played this game, but kind of one of those unique, exclusive Nintendo RPGs. And one thing I like about the RPGs on the Nintendo GameCube is that they were very non-traditional in many ways. No two RPGs seem to share that bog standard party-based combat system. There was still a party-based system in many of them, like Baten Kaitos, but Baten Kaitos uses cards. Tales of Symphonia has beat-em-up mechanics within its RPG fighting, and Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles is cooperative and in real time, as is Tales of Symphonia, I imagine. And then the third age, I guess, is more traditional RPG. So it's nice that they had variation within their RPG gameplay. And it made for a small but fresh stable of such games. And after moving on, after Baten Kaitos, we didn't get that game. We got... there we go. We got... Oof. Well, I ruined my own joke. I was going to say we got this game here, but no, we don't. This is a PlayStation 2 case, but it looks close enough to a GameCube case that I didn't think it would clash too much. Here we have Beautiful Joe 2, a game that I have the feeling that it's much inferior to its original, to the original Beautiful Joe, reusing most of the same bosses and many of the same ideas, but I think people still really liked it, even if I didn't necessarily. I think I have to give it another chance. The original Beautiful Joe was part of that Capcom 5 agreement, which didn't really end up amounting to too much, but it was one of Capcom's big exclusives for the Nintendo GameCube. And there we have its sequel, which is perfectly acceptable, if not a little uninspired. Just needed a drink. And after Beautiful Joe 2, in November, still in November, I think. Yeah, still in November, we got Prince of Persia Warrior Within. Now, this game, it's big. its big contribution for the franchise was that it made the combat a lot better. Lots of new weapons. Maybe it tells you that here. Though, yeah, there's some of the features right there. Though this is otherwise considered one of the weaker of the Prince of Persia reboot games, that original trilogy. Or is it a quadrilogy? I'm not sure. But even so, it still seems like a quality title, and I look forward to playing it. Not as good as Sands of Time, but it has its own wrinkles to offer, and I can certainly appreciate that. Though I won't appreciate a black and white manual, which this has. Yep. Oh well. So, after Prince of Persia, that would conclude 2004 for the Nintendo GameCube. And this is what 2004 had to offer. Just that 1 year. And I think that's pretty strong overall. A lot of interesting games, a lot of RPGs, which was a genre that the system was otherwise starving for. And lots of interesting games that utilize the GBA connective cable, which I think is pretty great. Then, anyway, in January of 2005, pretty early on, we got another big, massive exclusive from Capcom. Resident Evil 4. The Wii edition, which this is not what came out in 2005, but this is the version I bought in lieu of getting the GameCube version. And even though this version has lots of nice little things about it, the original game would still maintain most of the positives found in this version. Like Baiten Kaitos and Lord of the Rings The Third Age, this is a 2-disc game, unlike this 1-disc here. And it didn't have IR IR aiming. But yeah, you use the GameCube controller, of course. Anyway, not the version that was so beloved, though the Wii version is beloved, but this game was considered a massive get for the GameCube. And it's one of those games where everything is just so thoughtfully polished, and they clearly designed every instance of the game rather than just pouring elements in and hoping they interacted. The level designers really made sure that the encounter design was perfectly fitting with the area that you're in. And that's what I found when I played through it. It's like really a AAA experience, and it still looks good and holds up. People love that game. Now I need to move this over, if I can. I think that's going to create problems for me. So I'll tell you what, I think we're going to finish this video in a part 3. So to those who watched part 1 and 2, thank you. And please look forward to that.